Okay, so we're going to be going over fungi in lab today, this week actually. Today we're all at home, being Saturday. And I just wanted to go over some of the interesting features of fungi and their life cycles, specifically fungal life cycles. So this is from your textbook, lecture textbook, chapter 23, figure 23.5. And it is the life cycle for the for black bread mold, right? Rhizopus stolonifer. It's also the general life cycle for all fungi within the division or phylum Zygomycota. So it's kind of interesting. Let me zoom in a little bit because I want to show you. Notice there's two things it can do, right? It can do asexual reproduction, and it can also do sexual reproduction. So let's talk about asexual reproduction first. Okay, whoa, things getting out of control here. All right, so let me blow that up a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, so all fungi can undergo asexual reproduction. Right? That's not unique necessarily. Really makes it different from animals. Very few animals, relatively speaking, can reproduce asexually. Plants can reproduce asexually, or many plants can. If you take a cutting of a plant and putting a cutting in the ground, and it grows into another plant, that's asexual reproduction. So asexual production makes genetic copies of the organism that is reproducing. And so when you do asexual reproduction, there's really no variability generated in between generations. And in Rhizopus, it generates these special structures called sporangiophores. They're multicellular structure, and their job is really to put this sporangia up in the air, and on that sporangia is formed spores. And these spores come off. These are single-celled. They're called sporangiospores, but just call them asexual spores. That's fine with me. They have a protective coat around them to prevent them from drying out. Single cells that when they germinate, they'll grow into another, you see down here, another mycelial organism, another multicellular fungal organism. Now this organism, once again, would be identical to, genetically speaking, to this one here. Okay? We haven't really changed the genes. Well, asexual reproduction is very quick. And it doesn't generate any variation. We'll talk in class about why you would undergo asexual versus sexual reproduction. But there are times when sexual reproduction is advantageous. Okay, remember what constitutes sexual reproduction. We're not just talking about copulation. We're talking about production of gametes that have half the number of chromosomes, and those get reunited in fertilization. And that makes a zygote with double the number of chromosomes again. And that's a way of keeping the chromosome number the same and generating variation between generations. So fungi have that. So when fungi go to reproduce, I want to draw your eye to, I keep pressing that, to something here. Notice on this life cycle diagram right here, notice the minus and the plus. Now I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but the minus and the plus those basically indicate what are called mating types, and these have it's roughly the same idea as male and female. So you can think of it something like this, right? Now I don't mean to say that the plus, right? Plus, this is the plus one here, is not male, and minus is not female or Wonder Woman. It's just there is no boy-girlness in yeast or fungi. It's simply that the differences between them are important for mating. If you're a minus, you can only sexually reproduce by finding a plus organism. Okay, so that's it there. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so when a fungus wants to sexually reproduce, we'll talk in class about why an organism will want to do that. It finds the Wonder Woman fungus finds the faux riverboat gambler fungus, and they actually create this multicellular structure. So these dots in here are nuclei. Okay, and it makes this multicellular structure, the goal of which is to make this right here. This is the zygosporangium. Okay. Down here, the zygosporangium. Notice that this blue here indicates this is the only point in its life cycle that it is 2N, in other words, has 2 copies of every chromosome. The rest of the life cycle in green is N. It only has these cells, all these nuclei only have 1 chromosome per cell. Okay, so it's almost the flip of humans, where we spend most of our life in a state where we have 2 copies of every chromosome. It's only that short period of time when egg and sperm are produced that you have cells with one copy of a chromosome. But anyway, we make the zygosporangium, or they make the zygosporangium really. Inside the zygosporangium, we haven't talked much about meiosis. We'll kind of leave that be. So in the zygosporangium is where the essentially mom and dad fungus's yeast chromosomes will be portioned out, and then you make this spore forming structure here, and it creates spores. Okay, those spores are different from these spores up here. Remember, these spores up here were genetically identical to this organism here. These spores here are a mix of faux riverboat gambler and fungus and Wonder Woman fungus, right? So this down here generates variability between generations, whereas this is just a quick way to make copies of yourself. Okay? So, like I said, this is Rhizopus I can never say it, stolonifer. This is a black bread mold. So this is, this is all going on in your fridge. So a lot of these life cycle diagrams in this chapter don't necessarily have the minuses and pluses. Let me show you. Here we go. This is the Basidiomycota. Okay, Basidiomycota include all mushroom-forming shelf fungi. So the turkey tail fungus that I've showed you on the growing on dead logs and things, that is a Basidiomycota. And what's happening there is, notice that the this plus minus strain here, right here, okay, that's the male-female component. Although remember, it's not male and female, it's just if you're a plus strain, you have to find a minus strain to undergo sexual reproduction. Just like if you're a man, in order to go sexual reproduction, you're going to have to find a woman, right? So they actually do something really interesting. So notice the plus strain has blue nuclei, and the negative strain has purple nuclei. And notice what they do is they grow alongside each other, and they make each cell, if you look really closely in here, notice that each cell has a blue and a purple nucleus. So what a mushroom is it's a boy fungus, man fungus, and a woman fungus that are growing together. They make cells that have both nuclei in there. That forms an organism. So each one of the cells in this fungus has 2 nuclei in it, one from mom, one from dad. Okay, and it's in the gills of the fungus, so that underside of the fungal cap. What they're showing here, this line of fungi, let me see if I can maneuver this up here. Here we go. This gill here, that's one of the gills, and we'll see in lab these line of what are called basidiospores. This is where the generation of this is where the actual meiosis and the partitioning of the chromosomes and all that happens. All right, so underneath the gills, you get the formation. So this is the structure of the basidium that is on the gill. It develops into basidiospores. Now these are the spores that have they have a mix of the both parents' chromosomes, so they will go make another mycelial fungus that is genetically a mix between the 2 parents that were involved in making this mushroom. Okay, so kind of interesting there. Other figures in here, the most ones we'll look at are the zygomycota. So we'll look at this one in lab. We will also look at some ascomycota. Right, ascomycota. Notice in this one the Let's go here. Here they didn't put plus and minus. I'm not quite sure why, but if you look at this white one here, this white individual, notice around here this structure right here is called the antheridium. Okay, so the anther of a flower, we learned, is the male structure. So this is the quote-unquote male, and this yellow one is terminates in a structure called the ascogonium, right? Gonium, oogonium, those are all words that indicate eggs, ovaries, things like that. So clearly the yellow is the female, and they obviously form a structure together, a fruiting structure, which consists of both of those organisms. That makes spores up here. We'll look at these too. So this one doesn't have the minus and the plus. Anyway, I've talked way too long. I will see you Monday.